Okay, hello everyone. Let's get started. This is the third of this series that we're doing as we launch the website, this new website. So thank you for joining us for this interactive webinar from Futures Without Violence in partnership with the Office on Violence Against Women as we launch the National Strategy Center on Engaging Men to End Gender-Based Violence.
Bienvenidos todos y todas. Esta es la tercera sesión en esta serie para el lanzamiento de nuestro nuevo sitio web. Así que gracias por estar aquí para este webinario interactivo de Futures Without Violence, que es Futuro sin Violencia, en alianza con la Oficina contra la Violencia a la Mujer, que es Office on Violence Against Women, para el lanzamiento del nuevo Centro Nacional de Estrategias de Integración de Hombres para la Violencia de Género. Es este nuevo sitio web, que en inglés es el National Strategy Center on Engaging Men to End Gender-Based Violence.
Please mute your audio and have your video turned off.
Mantengan, por favor, el micrófono y la cámara apagados durante la presentación.
Today's session is being interpreted. We provide audio in Spanish and English. Before we continue, it's important that you select a language channel.
Esta sesión está siendo interpretada. El sonido será en inglés y en español. Entonces, antes de continuar, es importante que seleccione el canal del idioma en el que desee escuchar.
Please navigate to the interpretation menu in Zoom at the bottom of your screen and select your channel. If you're having any issues with the technology, let us know in the chat in either English or Spanish.
Vayan al menú de interpretación de Zoom, que está en la parte inferior de la pantalla, y seleccionen el canal de idioma. Si tienen algún problema para activarlo, háganoslo saber con un mensaje en el chat, y lo pueden hacer tanto en inglés como en español.
My name is Jesse Mahler, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Jennifer Ray and Nivea Castaneda, and Sean Whitaker, who will be helping you through the technology of the session, as well as through the content and the launch of this website. We have a few announcements before we get started and get to the exciting pieces. We have links to access the Spanish and English captions for this session in the chat, and you're welcome to enter any questions or comments in either English or Spanish in the chat during this session. We're recording this webinar, and it will be uploaded to the front of the new website within the next week. So thank you to our interpreters and our captioners for providing their services today. It's also worth noting that we are presenting a website that is in English. And while there are future plans to translate the website into Spanish and other languages and other materials, the current option is to use Google Translate. The PowerPoints for this session in both English and Spanish are available in the chat in just a moment. So with that, we can get started. We can launch this website. This is actually, as I said, the third time that we're doing this launch. We wanted to make sure people could come from different times. So it's a funny thing to say, we're launching, and then we're launching again, but we're doing it. We're so excited that you're here today, and hope that this can be a really relevant resource for your work. And so my name is Jesse Mahler. I work at Futures Without Violence. We are a national organization that in our department, we do work around engaging boys and men to end gender-based violence, to address social and cultural norms through training, through technical assistance, through resource development. And I am joined by Jennifer Ray and Nivea Castaneda, who can briefly introduce themselves now as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Ray, and I serve as the Program Services Director with Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse. We are a state-certified domestic violence center in Palm Beach County, Florida. Our primary services are to serve survivors of domestic violence and their children, but we have been engaging in prevention work since the late 90s. In 2015, we were awarded a grant from the Office on Violence Against Women to engage men and boys in the prevention of gender-based violence. And we joined Futures to support other communities to do the same in 2019. Nivea?
And hello, my name is Nivea Castaneda. I am the Director of Impact and Systems Change at Caminar Latino, Latinos United for Peace and Equity. We call ourselves LUPE for short. At LUPE, we build capacity at the individual, family, community, and systemic level by offering TA, technical assistance, tools and training surrounding public policy and systems change, and also research for those who are interested in research at the intersection of gender-based violence, racial identity, and child welfare.
So what are we going to do today? Because the website is live, but we wanted to have a chance to actually talk through about how to navigate the website and some of the different uses of it. So first and foremost, for those of you who are new or just sort of, I wonder what this is about, we are going to do an introduction around what engaging men means and some of the key ideas and principles that underline the website. And then we're going to go really into the content. So we're going to talk about what's on the website, how to navigate it, and how you can use it in very practical ways. We'll have a little activity where you all will be able to really test it in your own way to make sure you're comfortable with it. And then we'll have time for question and answer, of which in our earlier session, there were many. So let us start with some of the kind of key ideas about what engaging men is. So when we refer to engaging men, we're really speaking about a whole host of strategies, of training, a movement, resources, programs and initiatives that are meant to work with men, meet men where they're at, and train men to leverage their positions as fathers, as siblings, as teachers, as peers, as coaches, as policymakers to make positive social change and to address sexual violence, including sexual harassment, advancing gender equity, and more. So that is what we're speaking about here. We know that that's a simplification of this. There is a lot of conversation around working with men who are survivors. We need to look at this intersectionally to know that not all men share the same identities. And that is what, broadly speaking, this website and this field is focused on. Some of the principles that underline this are, one, that we believe deeply that violence is not inevitable, and that violence and harmful gender norms come from media, from family, from society, and that what can be taught can be untaught. And relatedly, that men have the power to make communities safer. So through training and being equipped with various kinds of skills and knowledge, that men can play even more significant and meaningful roles to address various kinds of violence and advance safety and equity and respect in our communities. We believe that this needs to be done through relationships. We can have as fancy curricula as we want, with the most amazing content, with the most amazing theories, but that doesn't matter if we're not doing this and listening to the community and engaging men and empowering men to take ownership over these things, so that we can see much more broad and systemic change, and change that is rooted in culture and values. So lastly, as I said, this is also about addressing trauma and healing, because we know that our work with men cannot be solely looking at a binary of men as perpetrators and women as victims and survivors. And so we see it much more complexly than that, and a number or all of the resources on the website represent that too. A few strategies that are worth noting here, for example, would be programming with men, which could include multi-session curricula, which could look like training for men, events that take place, bystander intervention programs. We could see this looking like training men to leverage their roles as I said, as educators, as colleagues within workplaces or within government, to really understand what it looks like to advance gender equity, what it looks like to advance dating violence prevention programming. We also could see this within public campaigns focused on addressing things like stigma that may make it difficult for men and boys to speak about issues around mental wellness, that may make it difficult to come forward as survivors. We see all of this as part of examples of a holistic strategy here. So with that said, we heard from you all coming into this session about what your work looks like and also what you're looking for from a website. And with that, I'll pass it to Nivea to speak about what some of those things are.
Thank you, Jesse. So with that pre-survey, it's always very helpful to see what you're all doing already. And then also in the next slide, see what has been or it should be helpful moving forward. So in terms of what kinds and types of initiatives you have all been working on to engage men, we received feedback relating to training, events, counseling, film screenings, workshops, and even art displays during awareness months, for example. We also heard from you that you are utilizing programs such as mentors and programs like Mentors in Violence Prevention, Coaching Boys into Men, and Men of Courage. You are also utilizing abusive partner interventions and the engagement of fathers. And I also have been working with research and policy recommendations. And some of you are doing nothing yet, which is completely fine. This is why we're here. We also asked what resources would support your initiatives to engage men. And we heard from you all that curricula, programs, videos, materials, and creative content would be very helpful in your initiatives to engage men from diverse backgrounds as well. Public education materials created with men in mind, step-by-step guidance and practices, as well as connections to other organizations and men who are experts. That would be very helpful. And other training. And again, some of you are still not sure what you're needing. And today will serve as hopefully a basis for where to start and how to start. With that said, for today's goals, after this session, you will all be able to navigate the Engaging Men website to find what you're looking for. You will be able to list the types of resources available on the website and how they can support different Engaging Men initiatives. You will also be able to describe how the website integrates culturally specific perspectives and resources. And finally, you will be able to use the website to more easily answer the questions, where do we start and where do we go? And I will pass it on to Jen from here.
Thank you, Nivea. So we want to talk about what the goals are for this website. Why did we create a new website on Engaging Men? There are many locations across the web for Engaging Men resources through state coalitions, national organizations, local organizations, community-based groups. But there's a few places where you can find current resource lists that include practical guidance and ways to find what you're looking for. But a lot of them are very lengthy lists with lots of resources that are maybe a little bit more challenging to find exactly what you're looking for, depending on where you are in this work. This website is intended to be a curation of existing materials and specific content to support your initiatives, your programming, and training in your communities. So it's not going to be every resource that's available across our country or across the international communities doing this work, but really a resource to support how to build engaging and create engaging men programs within communities. So like Nivea said, the content that you all think is going to be helpful that you gave us in the pre-survey information is really similar to what is available to you through this site. We have curricula, organizations, national organizations that are doing this work that you can easily connect to from this site. We have different guides available related to programming, outreach, public campaign messaging, and more in relation to engaging men. There are videos and training resources that are available on the site, as well as research that's already been done and evaluation toolkits to help you do evaluation of your engaging men programs. And in each section, as we go through the website content, you will see that there are key principles around different topics within engaging men work and guiding questions to help you determine what you might want to be looking at within your community in relation to engaging men work. So we have a quick little fun poll for everyone. We want to hear from you about the kind of resource that you enjoy using the most out of the different resources that are out there and available. So Jesse will launch our poll. We have heard from folks that in previous sessions that it was challenging to pick one, but we do want you to focus on your most favorite tool that you enjoy working with.
And this is Jesse again. This is, also helpful for us to know, and for you to recognize, well, what am I most looking forward to using or finding? And we will talk about each of these as we go. And unsurprisingly, this is very, very similar. It's so funny how trends really do emerge with things like this, because this is very similar to what we saw before. I will end the poll and share the results. I know maybe some of you didn't get to answer yet, but this shows the general trend of, unsurprisingly, curricula, videos, training resources are some of the kind of most people are most interested in or most enjoy using. And then organizations, slightly less so. And then, as we said last time, we see you all who are focused on research and evaluation, some of the less, less glamorous parts of this work, but it can be so meaningful for many different reasons. And there is certainly content on the website for both research and evaluation too. So with that, I'll pass back to you, Jen, to really talk about what this looks like on the website.
Thank you, Jesse. So we're going to give you a framework of how everything is laid out, and then Jesse's going to literally launch the site for us and navigate through it, and you'll have an opportunity to also play with it today on this webinar. The logo at the top left corner of the site will always take you to your homepage, where you'll find some engaging men principles and background on engaging men. Then you have the 4 key pages with content and guidance in doing this work within communities. So those areas are planning for action, programming, evaluation, and training. In addition to that, there are some other resources and information available to you through the Get Connected page to connect directly with us, the About Us page to learn a little bit more about the organizations that were involved in creating the site, and the library, which I just think is a super fun tool. So when you see the way it works, I think hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I do. And then on each of those content pages, the 4 key pages that we have with content, it is divided with sub-navigation in different topics related to that page. So for example, on the Planning for Action page, well, really on all of them, you'll see the red bar, but on the Planning for Action page, the red bar is your sub-navigation toolbar. And in Planning for Action, they do have 4 sections: building relationships, readiness assessments, community action teams, and strategic planning. And I did see someone in the chat who mentioned they're from the OVW campus program. And I will just say, even though this is not the campus grant focused webinar, the community action team section is the one that has the most information related to the work of your CCRT, or your community coordinated response teams. When you get to each of those sub-navigation areas, you're going to find very specific content. So the first thing you'll find are principles around each of those subtopics. So the example is in this one, we must meet men where they're at. And there'll be some contextual narrative that's available. And then there are questions to consider. So when thinking about this particular principle, the questions are, where do men meet and connect in your community? And that's to help you to think through building relationships with men in your community and where you might start that process. And so in each one of those topics, there will be this information available to you to help support your planning, developing content, and onboarding new staff. So then under each one of those principles and key and guiding questions area, there will be the specific resources related to that topic. You'll find reports, guides, infographics, toolkits, curricula, videos. All of those resources will be right underneath the content about that topic to connect the content to the resources that will support you in building your programming. So one of the things that was of a great discussion when we were working on building this site was about how to ensure that there was access to culturally specific resources. And the conversation was around, do we weave it through the website, or do we have a specific page for culturally specific resources? And because our team is dedicated to the message that our communities need to be considering culturally specific resources and the intersectionality of men that are living in our communities, we did not want it to be siloed as a separate section that was potentially visually putting out that it's something that we just add on. The intentional purpose of weaving it throughout the website was to make sure that those resources that are culturally specific are connected right to the content that we were discussing in the narrative areas and related to the questions, because they are critical principles to any work that's being done to engage and work with men to end gender-based violence.
So let's get to the website so that you can actually see it and we can, dive into some of the places that might be of most interest to you. And the way that we're going to do this before just sort of handing over the wheel to you all to peruse and find everything yourselves is by talking about a couple of most frequently asked questions that we get when we're doing training and having conversations, which are, where do I get started with this work, with programs, with training? If I'm totally new to this, where do I get started? And where can I find materials to train myself or my staff or my coordinated community response team or whoever it might be in these key topics? So let's talk about a couple of these. And I'm going to share my screen with the website now. So here's the website. And you'll see on this homepage, as Jen mentioned, is a great starting point of if you're very new to this work and you're just looking to get familiar with some of the general ideas and concepts. And some of this is fairly self-explanatory, but we like to spell it out anyways of, what is engaging men, the principles that I spoke about earlier, a key resource that outlines some of the connections between masculine norms and gender-based violence. What are some roles that men can play? What are some strategies that are included within this realm? For instance, programming or work with fathers, or making connections between the gender-based violence movement and other movements as well. So these are a good place to start by reading, and the same thing applies to different pages as well. So for example, if I was to think about programming and you were to say, oh yeah, programming is something I'd like to learn more about, I could read through some key principles around programming. I could read through some questions that I could, chew on as I'm getting started. And I could look at some different frameworks that work on it with men happens through. So using the social ecological model, talking about dominant and counter stories. And I know I'm going through this quickly, but it's just to give a sense of where can I get a rough outline of what this looks like. The other thing that we would suggest doing is open one of the more hefty guides that really outlines this, that for instance, if I was to pick out one here and I was to select a larger guide on let me see right here. You can see that there's quite a few things. If I was to pick, I'm actually going to go back up here. If I wanted to understand, what's a roadmap for male allyship look like, if that's something that we're, looking to be able to promote more in the community, I could open this up, and this might be a great place to start and just learn in the upfront. So this is a great resource from Promundo, who did some national surveying a few years ago on issues around workplace equality, on issues like perceptions of the Me Too movement. And at the bottom, scroll all the way down, you can see that there is this roadmap for male allyship with some really succinct steps around listening, around reflecting on power and privilege, on advocating for women's leadership, with some how and why included within. So this is just one resource, but we bring it up because each of these in their own right is a place to get started in a particular kind of way. But as I said with the training question, it also depends upon what you want to get started with. So if you're looking to train your staff, a lot of these resources will be useful for that purpose. You might be interested in the training page. I will be the first one to say that this is a starting point. So this page, for example, does not have a complete list of upcoming trainings and a calendar, or even what are all of the asynchronous offerings that exist that someone could just go through to do learning. But what it does have is some guidance and resources. So it has organizations that you could reach out to for training. And you can see this is a feature throughout the whole website, because you can click around and zoom up and down. And I forgot to mention, if you want to go all the way back to the top, you can click this little caret here, and it will bring you back to the main up here. Yeah, Jen?
Jesse, do you mind if I interrupt for 1 second?
Please.
I had a direct message. Someone is unable to see anything but a black screen. I'm just wondering if I can check in with our other co-presenters and see if they are able to see the website.
Are you, Jen?
I am.
I can see it as well.
Is
Okay.
anyone else not able? Okay, other people can see.
We're getting that in the chat too. Okay, I'm so sorry to the Rosa. I hope that you can figure that out on your end.
Here, we're going to give you the link anyways. So here's the link, and hopefully you can just get on there and follow along as we're talking. So thanks, Jen.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good. So as I was saying, I think that this is not a complete list of things like upcoming trainings or asynchronous offerings, but there are organizations with their links to their training pages. And then there are some key resources, like this one comes to mind right here, which is a workbook. You can see the resource type associated with it. And it says it's a self-learning booklet aiming to build a learner's understanding of the relationship between masculinities and violence against women and girls. So this could be a place where if you're looking for discussion questions, if you're looking for activities, if you're looking for key concepts, or even maybe a chart that someone could fill out in a training, that this could be a great place to go. So we see this website as a place that can build everything that you need necessarily without everything being sort of fully packaged in that kind of a way. So I'm really excited to say that there's more to come as well. We'll talk more about this in the question and answer, but we're going to be adding many more of those asynchronous resources. We're going to be building more of those, the calendar of upcoming trainings and other materials that we want to gather from you all. So we know that we've done a lot of research and found about new resources that we didn't even know existed, but there's a lot more out there. And we'll talk at the end of this session about how you can contact us to be adding more things onto this website. So that's a little demo. There's a lot more here, and we're going to get into more about how to use the website for other purposes in a moment. I actually remembered one final thing, which is that the library is a piece that I wanted to show. We can see the library right now, right? So this is a page where you can filter between different kinds of materials. So if you wanted to very quickly be able to go to curricula, you can see that here is a list of different curricula. If you want research, again, this is not a full list, but here is a number of different research articles and reports that have been written, or if you'd like videos. So this is a great place to go if you just want to browse around and open many different items and learn in that kind of a way. I'll preemptively say we don't have a search function, in part because creating a search function with the number of resources on the website would have taken many more hours than we had before we wanted to launch here today, but we do hope to add some kind of a search function in the future. So with that said, let's hand it over to you. So I already put a link in the chat, and I'll put it in again for you to access the actual website. But what we're going to do right now is a little competition. And people who know me know that I'm a fairly competitive person, but we're going to do it in a very friendly way, in a very fun way together, where we're going to see through 5 questions who can find the 5 following things the fastest. And when you find the thing, you can put the answer in the chat. And then importantly, we want to ask, how did you find what you're looking for? Because that is the most important question in terms of how to actually learn how to navigate the website and find what you need. I did want to make note in the chat of Lillian, your comment, hi Lillian, that there's a large black banner on the website, which is interesting. And maybe it's our browsers. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't see that for me, but maybe that is an issue on our technology side. It feels like with the website, there's always new technology things that pop up. So is Lillian, just quickly in the chat, is it very distracted? Does it mean that it's very difficult to actually kind of look at things on the website? No. Okay, good. I'm glad that you can still kind of find what you need. So let's do this activity.
Can you switch what you're sharing, Jesse?
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
This is why we have co-presenters. So this is the friendly competition, the friendly little activity of who can find the following fastest. So the first question is, what is the name of one example public campaign to engage men that is on this website? So what is the name of one example public campaign to engage men? Lori, I see your comment first, because we are dads. I wish that we had a some kind of prize, but you get shouted out here, I guess, is the little celebration. Lori, would you be okay coming off mute and just sharing quickly how you found that?
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, I might even feel like I need to say I might have cheated a little bit, because I was looking at it before you even announced the competition, and I saw it right at the top, it says campaign. So I went in there and typed in the first thing I saw.
That's not cheating.
Smart. And that was on the library where you saw public campaign?
No, it's like the little banner going across. Was I in library? Let me see.
In the
Wait
red.
one second. I
on
must have been in library. Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Perfect. I see some other examples in the chat too. Let's go to the next one. Who created the conversation starters for kids? Who created the conversation starters for kids? Hello, Ileana? Is that how you pronounce your name?
It is. She's from my office.
Oh, hey, Ileana. Would you mind sharing how you found Global Boyhood Initiative? Maybe audio is not on right now. I see Karen, you were the second person, so, but Karen, are you able to share quickly how you found that one?
Sure. I went to the library and then saw that things were in alphabetical order. So I went to curricula and found it that way.
There you go. So the library is the place to be, apparently, when you're looking to find something specific, which makes sense because many of the other pages have more narrative and sort of key ideas within guiding questions. Okay, let's do the third one. Thanks, Karen. What is one level of change that we can use to evaluate our programs that is listed on this website through one tool? What is one level of change we can use to evaluate our programs? Rebecca Chandler, I see you say shift in definition. That was a very close one though. And Rebecca, can you share how you found that?
So I went to the evaluation and then scrolled down. It says level of change to evaluate. And the first one is shift in definition.
So the key word was evaluate, and then you scroll down. You know, these aren't meant to be trick questions necessarily. They're meant to be fairly straightforward. So thanks so much for sharing. Okay, we have two more. What email can you reach out to for assistance with the website? Any questions you have about the website, what email can you reach out to? David. Hi, David. Yes, engaging men at futureswithoutviolence.org. David, do you mind sharing how you found that one?
I went to contact us and then I actually first went to the bottom of I was seeing if it was in the footer, which it wasn't. And then I went to the contact us. So it was round 2 of options.
Well, thank you, David. And maybe we can add it to the footer too, since that does make sense to have all the way at the bottom as well. But yes, any questions you have, that is the email, engagingmen.futureswithoutviolence.org, which will be on the screen at the very end of this session too. All right, last but not least, and this is less of a competition, which is what is one resource that you have not seen before? There were many that we found when we were pulling together this website that we had never seen before. So what's one that you have not seen before? And please, add all answers. So it's not about who necessarily does the first one. Karen says a value action. Jean or Jan says addressing discrimination and bias against gay men. I believe that resource is from Stonewall in the UK. Instituto WEM. So hopefully there's lots in here that is new and that you'll be able to find as you're just browsing around. I know that in our session earlier today, there were about 3 or 4 things that some people put in the chat that are not on the website that we have to add to the website. Next Gen Man was one of them, a small organization that does very similar work and actually has their own library with some different things, including some new reports and such. So we're excited about to add some more resources too that aren't here. All right, so let us move on. And I actually have one question before we get to Q&A, which is, did you have any challenges in finding what you were looking for? So maybe it wasn't so immediate, but any bigger challenges or things that are confusing on the website that we can clarify now and how to navigate it before we get into other questions? You can put these in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute, you're welcome to as well. Okay, I already talked about the search function, so that may clarify that piece already. I'll preemptively share that within the curricula and program section, some people had asked, well, where do I find culturally specific ones or ones that are specific to my region? And the short answer is that in terms of filtering, there's no current way to filter by your region or a search bar around a specific kind of population, because it all is integrated through. We may think about making that different over time, but you may need to do a little bit of browsing. Another question came up earlier as well about whether or not you can tell or how many of the programs are evidence-based or are rated in various kinds of ways. Those are things that you would need to go to the actual website or organization that created the program to learn more about. I see one question. I was looking for home to get to the main page. So the best way to do that is if you click that little caret at the bottom of the screen, it'll bring you to the top. And then if you click on the logo in the top left, it'll bring you back to the home page. Oh, thank you, Jen. You put that in the chat too.
I did.
So I see one other question, and this will be the last one I take right now, Nivea, before I pass to you for other questions. How open are churches and healthcare professionals to this information? Any intersecting materials? So that feels like thanks for the question, Judy. That feels like a pretty deep question that I think is deeply dependent upon what kinds of church and what kinds of healthcare professionals and the kinds of settings and what your kind of initiatives are looking to do. I think a lot of the materials could be possibly relevant, in terms of training healthcare professionals in issues related to gender bias or related to empathy and such, because materials on this website do address that and how men can advance gender equity within various workspaces as well. There's also, I see programs that could be implemented through churches in working with young people, for example. So I think it greatly depends upon, this is where it comes into more how we go about the work. And yes, referring to meeting them where they are. Exactly. And a big part of this one idea just to put out there is just really looking at what are the values and the principles and the already existing programming or training or initiatives that these groups have going on and meeting that where it is, as opposed to it being totally something from the outside. How can we work with where people already are to say, let's work together, listen, and then build using some, for example, materials on this website. Yeah, Jen?
And Jesse, thank you. The other thing that I would say to that is the planning for action page related to readiness assessments is where everyone can use some sort of an assessment or interviews or focus groups in their community to learn about how open their community is to this work and where their current values and beliefs are around issues related to men's roles in gender-based, preventing and ending gender-based violence.
Thanks, Jen. So we'll now open the floor to other questions, and I will pass it to Nivea to take us through that.
Thank you. What other questions are coming up for you as we have this discussion or as you explore the website? And you can either write them in the chat or raise your hand. Let's see, what criteria do you have on what is added to the website? Jesse, go ahead.
Great question, and makes a lot of sense that you would ask that, David. And you know, I would say the bar is high, but not extraordinary. I mean, we just really want it to be useful and relevant. You know, it doesn't need, not every resource on here is peer reviewed 2 or 3 times. A lot of this is just kind of pulling together what we thought would be most useful or quite useful, knowing that there are still going to be some gaps. So there are some different curricula, for example, like there's a couple curricula that I'm thinking of right now that are more informal and that are sort of more, for instance, from a community group that pulled together something quite comprehensive, but could still be quite interesting for others to be able to look at, that was not widely available beforehand. The same thing applies to some videos that maybe came through smaller organizations that, you know, I'll be quite frank, there are some pieces of those that, do I agree with every single word within them? No. Do I think that there is a great foundation to work off of and look at and draw from? Yes. So hopefully that provides a little insight as to what the criteria are. And I mentioned earlier that we're looking to add lots and lots and lots to this website still. So that could be a future conversation too, David. Does that relatively answer the question? I don't know if there are particular sections or kinds of materials you were referring to. Great, thanks.
Jesse, you had also said something in the previous session in response to another question from someone. And what we know is that there's programs that are done in marginalized communities are not necessarily the most heavily evaluated programs. Did you want to expand on that too? To help folks know that we brought that material in very purposefully, even if it doesn't have that evidence base behind it.
Right. If we were to only select programs that have had randomized control trials conducted on them for the curricula section, it would be a not very long list. And we wanted to talk about how our approaches and strategies need to be much more adaptable and community driven and grounded. And so that is, yeah, something that I think is quite important for us throughout the whole website, including for the curricula piece.
And also to add on that, it's very important for us to open up our minds to consider that there are different ways of evaluating curriculum trainings that are non-Western based. We're so used to having, you know, all these follow-up evaluation based or Western evaluation based in order to make something credible. And actually there are lots of communities that are going against that because we are rooted in that community knows best, right? And so when you make the community the expert, evaluation is going to not look like what we're used to. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And then Felicia said, when will search functionality be added? So the search function has come up in every webinar where we introduce the website. It would definitely be very helpful to have a search bar that would allow us to filter. However, because we have so much on the website, it is a difficult thing to do quickly. So it is something that we're considering as we move forward.
Don't expect it in the next 2 months, for example.
Yes. Thank you for that question.
Other questions? And there's a couple from past sessions that I think are worth mentioning as well, if that's okay, Nivea.
Yeah, please do.
One of them is, could this program offer training resources for different, come to present and train in different places across the country? Yes and no, it very much depends. I wish that we had more staffing capacities to say, any request, we're there. And that's not really the reality. With that said, we definitely are committed to also thinking about how the website can support your internal training capacity. Who can be local speakers? How can you train? And that's where some of those asynchronous training pieces that we're going to add, I think will be useful too. There was also a question about rural resources. And the one that I think is most relevant in that context is under the programming section. It's called the Rural Challenge Toolkit that I think is quite useful. So that's one that I would point out in particular.
We also received another question in the chat from Judy. They asked, is there a way to identify evidence-based materials or best practices? I'm asking because funders are still tied to this approach. Most definitely they are, even though I'm open to all. So on the website, whenever we introduce, whether it's a program or a curricula, a toolkit, etc., the resource type, there isn't anywhere right there that says this is evidence-based. That is something that you will have to, once you start exploring the resources, that you will be able to see. But it is something that definitely we will take in mind. Jen, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to give a sort of a broader tip on that. And that is that the way we have, I like to think of my ability to add to this team, being from a local organization, as the way in which we've sort of been able to launch these programs locally and receive funding for them. And it was from learning over the years, and David Lee is on here. He's one of the people I've learned from over the years, and connecting the research that's on the website that you can find from the library section about the best ways to do this work and the approaches and models that should be used, and connecting that research to what you're proposing in your grant applications and why you're choosing a particular curriculum or a particular program based off of the research that says this approach is the approach that works best. That's really just been one of the things that I think is most successful in that process, rather than picking a specific curriculum or a program because that program has that research behind it. I hope that's a little helpful.
Thank you for that, Jen. Anyone else have any final questions before we wrap up?
We do have one.
Oh, Rosa Silva said, would you be including specific topics, areas such as human trafficking? This did come up in the first training, Jesse. Did you want
Mhm.
to take this on?
Sure. So the short answer is that there are only a few resources that are specific to human trafficking on the website. This is not a comprehensive website when it comes to what is under the umbrella of gender-based violence as a whole. You know, it doesn't have training in all of those areas. And to my knowledge, I don't know of a great deal of resources that really focus upon, again, training with that lens around masculinity and gender norms related to trafficking prevention. I know of more related to, for instance, things like screening questions and such, and best practices in that area, which this website does not touch upon. With that said, there are a few resources. For example, the one on the homepage that is under Promundo is focused upon, broadly speaking, the connections between masculine norms and gender-based violence. That does touch upon trafficking as one element of violence. There are also a few, particularly the international resources that come from UN Women and other places that do touch upon trafficking as well, from looking kind of broadly speaking, but less so on necessarily a training or a practical programming front. So hopefully that answers the question. But if you have resources or ideas about how that can be more specifically addressed within this specific domain, we would love to hear about them.
Absolutely, thank you. And also, if you do have remaining questions beyond this point, or as you are playing around with the website, you know, we also provided a link where the thank you, Jesse, so perfect. Engagement at futureswithoutviolence.org. Please feel free to reach out to us. And Jesse, I will turn it over to you. thanks.
This is going to conclude our session and the launch. We hope that this is of great use to you over time. And please do, let us know if you have questions or additions. And stay tuned for more podcasts to be added, articles, asynchronous training tools, and more on working with male survivors as well, which I did want to call out that topic in particular. We recommend taking a look at the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, which recently released a toolkit on working with male survivors too. So with that said, we'll wrap up, and I hope you have a great rest of the day, great rest of the week, and speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Oh,
And
Jesse, where can
very
we find? Oh,
finally,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
very finally, the recording of this will be on the homepage of the website too, so you can stay tuned for that as well.
Have a good afternoon. Thank